Two of the most iconic planes from World War II are the British-made Supermarine Spitfire and its German counterpart, the Messerschmitt Bf-109. Thousands of both of these great planes were produced during World War II, each made in many different variations and subtypes. In this video, we will be focusing on the two main models of these planes used in the Battle of Britain, the Spitfire Mark I and the Bf-109E. Both of these planes would clash over Britain in an attempt to dominate the skies. We will discuss the origins of these planes, as well as 6 categories to determine where each plane had its strengths and weaknesses. The categories we will look at are speed and agility, armament, armor, reliability, visibility, and production. Supermarine, the company that designed the Spitfire, began working on a prototype for a new modern aircraft for the RAF, which is the British Air Force. The company began designing the Spitfire in 1935, and the first prototype was named the K5054. This prototype's first flight was on March 5th of 1936. The design seemed promising, so they continued development. The Spitfire Mark I's first flight was on May 14th of 1938 and was brought into service for the RAF on August 4th of that same year. Also, the Spitfire originally had a 2-bladed wooden propeller, which was later changed to a 3-bladed metal propeller. The Spitfire Mark I was around 30 feet in length and had a wingspan of 36 feet and 10 inches. As for the prototype of the Bf-109, Messerschmitt had developed the Bf-108 as a touring aircraft which first flew in 1934. Using the compelling traits of the Bf-108, Messerschmitt created a new fighter plane known as the Bf-109. The Bf-109's first flight was on May 29, 1935. The plane was added to the Luftwaffe, which is the German Air Force, in 1937. They continued to develop the plane and created the Bf-109B, which was tested during the Spanish Civil War. Two more designs, the Bf-109C and D models, were created, but Messerschmitt was still figuring out how to make the model more effective. The Bf-109E was then created, and it was the first major production mark after improving the previous models. The Bf-109E was 28 feet and 9 inches in length, and its wingspan was 32.5 feet. The Bf-109E by itself had multiple subtypes, which will be mentioned later. The Spitfire was powered by a Rolls-Royce Maryland II engine of 1,030 horsepower and could reach speeds of up to 367 miles per hour, one of the fastest planes of its time. On the other hand, the Bf-109E1 was equipped with the Daimler-Benz DB601 engine of 1,075 horsepower, one of the finest engines of its time. There are many different sub-variants of the Bf-109E itself. For example, the Bf-109E3, which was produced in late 1939, had an engine of 1,150 horsepower. In dogfights, the Spitfire could easily outturn the Bf-109E and had a turn speed of roughly 19 seconds, compared to the Bf-109's 25 seconds. The Spitfire's turn radius of 696 feet allowed it to perform sharper turns than the German pilot could, as the Bf-109 had a larger turn radius of 885 feet. However, the Bf-109E's far greater climb and dive rate allowed the plane to sustain climbing turns that the Spitfire could not keep up with. This granted German pilots the freedom to disengage from dogfights more easily if they wanted to. The Bf-109E had a climb rate of 59 feet per second, and the Spitfire Mark I had a climbing rate of 41.5 feet per second. The Spitfire performed better at higher altitudes, reaching their maximum speed of 367 miles per hour at 18,500 feet, while the Bf-109E reached its maximum speed of 350 miles per hour at 14,500 feet. At 18,500 feet, the altitude where the Spitfire was fastest at, the Bf-109 had a speed of about 340 miles per hour. Because the Bf-109s had tasks to escort German bombers over Britain at high altitudes where the Spitfire was fastest, the Spitfire had an even greater speed advantage over the Bf-109. The Spitfire had 4 wing types, each equipped with different guns. Wing A, the most commonly used wing type, had 8 7.7mm Browning machine guns in it. Each machine gun was equipped with 350 rounds and fired at a rate of 19 bullets per second, meaning that 152 bullets were shot per second in total. That added up to 3.8 pounds of ammunition being fired per second. In total, the Spitfire had enough ammo to fire for 18 seconds, but pilots would fire in short bursts in order to prevent the gun from jamming. Wing B of the Spitfire had 4 7.7mm Browning machine guns, and two 20mm Hispano cannons. Each of the cannons held 120 rounds and fired at a rate of around 11 rounds per second. The 1-second burst mass for Wing B was 8.2 pounds, over half the burst projectile weight of the Wing A. Next, Wing Type C could be equipped with either armament of the previous wing types, or equipped with four 20mm Hispano cannons. The final wing type, Wing D, had no armament. This wing type was used for reconnaissance models. Instead, it had a larger fuel tank for extra range. Lastly, some forms of the Spitfire included provisions for a 500-pound bomb under the center of the plane, or one 250-pound bombs on each wing. Contrastingly, the Bf-109E had multiple submodels of the plane. The Bf-109E1 used two 7.92mm MG-17 machine guns fitted in the wings of the plane and had an additional two MG-17 machine guns in the engine cowling. Because the machine guns were synchronized to fire through the propeller, the rate of fire was 17 rounds per second. The total amount of bullets fired per second by the four machine guns was 68 rounds per second, which is significantly less than the Spitfire's armament. The total weight of projectiles fired per second for the Bf-109E1 was 1.7 pounds. The next model of the Bf-109E was the Bf-109E2. This plane had two MG-151 20mm cannons on the wings, one 20mm cannon in the engine, along with two machine guns. This model was not produced in large numbers because the engine cannon caused too many problems. The Bf-109E3, the next major production mark of the Bf-109E, came into production in late 1939. It had an improved BB601AA engine of 1,150 horsepower. The plane had one MG FF 20mm cannon on each wing and two 7.92mm machine guns above the engine. The MG FF cannon had a rate of fire of around 9 rounds per second. Each cannon had 60 rounds to fire, so it could fire for a total of nearly 7 seconds. For comparison, the weight of projectiles fired per second was 5.5 pounds. The high-caliber cannons on the Bf-109s could deal more damage to enemy planes than the smaller 7.7mm machine guns on the Spitfire. By mid-1940, the new Bf-109E4 came into production. This plane had the same armament of the Bf-109E3, but had an upgraded set of MG-FF cannons called the MG-FF/N cannon, which had a slightly higher rate of fire. The Bf-109E5 was a reconnaissance fighter model. The plane was identical to the Bf-109E4, except the cannons were removed and a camera was added. The Bf-109E6 was also a reconnaissance plane. It had four machine guns just like the Bf-109E1, but pictures had to be taken with a handheld camera. The final major production variant of the Bf-109E was the Bf-109E7. This plane first saw production in August 1940. It had an improved engine of 1,200 horsepower. The plane was similar to the Bf-109E4, but had an optional 79-gallon drop tank for the plane, which could double its range. This addition was useful because the Bf-109s could stay over Britain longer to defend the bombers and attack enemy planes without the concern of running out of fuel. Both planes were eventually equipped with armor as the war progressed. The Spitfire Mark I had a total of 73 pounds of armor plate and an armored windscreen. This armor addition, though important to protect the plane and its pilot, slowed the plane down by about 6 miles per hour. When the Bf-109E4 began to be produced, it was equipped with an armored windscreen and an 8mm armor plate behind the pilot's head. One major drawback the Spitfire Mark I had was its engine carburetor. The engine carburetor would cause the engine to stall if the pilot were to perform certain maneuvers, such as the barrel roll or jolting forwards into a dive, if not performed in a way to avoid this. This was caused because during these maneuvers, the engine would either be lacking fuel or overflow with fuel. It would take extra time to perform the maneuver to avoid the engine stalling, which could take precious time in a dogfight. The Bf-109 did not have this problem because they had fuel injectors installed. The Spitfire. The Bf-109 had a major issue with their landing gear. The Bf-109's landing gear pointed outwards a bit when deployed, unlike the vertical landing gear of the Spitfire. If one of those wheels ever lost traction on the runway, the plane would end up spiraling and most likely getting damaged. Also, the wheels were narrowly placed together, causing the aircraft to be unstable while landing. Another disadvantage of the Bf-109's landing gear was that they often broke as the plane landed. The lighter structure of the Bf-109s lacked the strength to endure hard landings, as the plane frequently got upgraded with heavier engines and guns. This put strain on the landing gear, and in 1939 alone, over 250 Bf-109s were lost because of these problems. The Spitfire excelled in offering great views to the pilot. The cockpit had large mirrors and a bubble canopy, which gave British pilots an edge in situational awareness. On the other hand, the Bf-109 had a better gun sight than the Spitfire, but the angular canopy of the Bf-109 was cramped, and its thick frame did not offer as much visibility as the Spitfire's. When it comes to production, the Bf-109E could be more easily produced and was built in larger numbers than the Spitfire Mark I. It is important to note that Britain was also producing another plane called the Hurricane at the time, and more were built than the Spitfire. In total, 1,566 Spitfire Mark I's were produced through 1938 and 1941, and 3,477 Bf-109Es were built throughout the same time frame. It took 15,000 man-hours to build a single Spitfire Mark I, and only 9,000 man-hours to build the Bf-109E. The designer of the Bf-109, Willie Messerschmitt, wanted to make his aircraft light and use as little separate parts as possible to keep the aircraft design simple. This would help in producing more planes quicker. Both planes were phenomenal for their day, and were very well matched to each other. The Spitfire Mark I was a bit faster and more agile than the Bf-109E, but the Bf-109 had great firepower. Both planes were pretty reliable apart from a few flaws. The Spitfire allowed its pilot to have better awareness in the skies, but the simple but powerful design of the Bf-109 allowed it to be produced in large numbers.